Hey everyone, Warwick's here. So, as a reminder, I don't have alpha. Yes, I'm up here, by the way, top right of your screen. Mainly, I did this so that I could not block any of the tooltips or anything like that we're seeing. Because in today's video, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna dub build theory. So this is just a couple of videos. I'll probably do one for each monk spec. Maybe mess around with some things with other classes that I'm potentially playing: warrior, evoker, and mage. As kind of like a guy that's learning those classes, each of them. But basically, what I'm doing is I'm going to do build theory, and I'm going to start with Brewmaster Monk because I think it offers the most interesting build potential right now. At least it's got the most recent changes, so we're still kind of figuring out potential builds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go over kind of the class tree and then the spec tree. We're going to talk about the things that I think are mandatory, and then the things that I think that'll allow for some diversity in your build. Now, obviously, this is all going to be subject to tuning because we are months out still, probably another, I would say 4 months away from the expansion being released. I think it's going to be September. So probably closer to 3 months now because it's Memorial Day as I record this. And I think we're going to see probably roughly around Labor Day release window. So what we're going to do in this video is just kind of go through the class tree, and then we're going to talk about the spec tree. And I'm doing all of this based on tooltips, some feedback that I've been getting and reading off of the beta forums, listening to some other creators, kind of see what they are looking to do. So we're going to start with this. Now, as you can see, I've chosen Master of Harmony here for Brewmaster Monk. And that's the reason is I think it's going to end up being a little bit better because of a couple of different nodes. Obviously, Aspect of Harmony, just because when you use Celestial Brew, which you're using a lot, you're going to deal extra damage and a little bit of extra healing. But the big thing that I'm thinking is going to make it here is Endless Drought. Getting an additional charge of Celestial Brew means a ton more absorbs. As I've been looking over the changes and as I've been absorbing them, I get the feeling that what's going to make Brewmaster stand out is going to be the fact that it's going to have a ton of absorbs. So Prot Warrior also has a lot now with Ignore Pain, but I think this is going to slam that into the ground and trump it a lot. So it's going to be a stagger and absorb is kind of the way that Brewmaster is going to be mitigating a lot of its damage. Whereas, you look at some of the other tanks, like Bear obviously has its high health pool and it takes a lot of hits, but most of the hits are reduced. You look at like Vengeance and it can just stop a lot of damage from happening, and it parries a lot. Blood DK parries and heals, and then your shield tanks do a lot of blocking, and then Prot Paladin has good sustain and good cooldowns. Prot Warrior has good absorbs and just ways to make damage reduced through Demo Shout and things like that. So all the tanks kind of have their like niche and approach, and Brewmasters has kind of been clarified with how Blizzard wants to approach it through absorb shields being kind of along with stagger the thing that's going to make Brewmaster Monk mitigate as much damage as humanly possible. So Master of Harmony on the choice nodes, I think right now I think Purified Spirit for Mythic Plus is going to be better. And I'm kind of looking at this for both Mythic Plus and Raid. I think there is a situation in Raid where Shadowpan potentially becomes better because you're not needing all the defensive value, and Shadowpan does offer a really strong offensive throughput, particularly with Armor Pen and things like that. So I think there is a situation in Raid where you can run Shadowpan, and you would grab things like Pride of Pandaria. You would grab Predictive Training because it works really well with our choice node, and then here Lead from the Front, probably going to be your best bet there. And I think this has the potential to be like your raid choice because you don't necessarily need to prioritize your defensive as much as if you could put out even more damage but still live the mechanics, particularly because tank buster mechanics are usually very timed. So you should be able to time your cooldowns appropriately, and with Dampen and Fort Brew and a good Celestial, or even something like Elixir of Determination, which I've kind of started to turn around on, kind of better understanding what I feel is the approach here. think there's going to be opportunity to really try to work in maxing out your damage amp output here, and that's what Shadow Pan does. But for Mythic Plus, I think Master Harmony is going to be better. Purified Spirit, Harmonic Gambit, it's going to come down to the numbers, but I'm going to lean towards Purified Spirit right now. And then here you're going to grab, I think Mantra of Purity is going to be better specifically. Mantra of Tenacity would be really good for raid with big tank busters. Here I think Roar of the Heavens is going to be most useful, because especially on like weeks like Entangling, especially if this spread to other roots allows you to do the root removal, then you can basically entangle, make entangling not a big deal. And then Way of 1,000 Strikes obviously is going to be the big thing there. So I think that's kind of what you do in your choice nodes. Other than that, you're just kind of playing these, and you'd still play your rotation normally. It doesn't have any game-changing impacts. It just means that while you're under a Celestial Brew, like, you're going to do a lot more. All right, now what are the required nodes in the class tree, I think? Let's look at a raid build first. So obviously Tiger's Lust and Fast Feet are going to be, I think, absolutely necessary. Calming Presence, obviously, because anytime you can get a damage reduction, you're good. I think Grace of the Crane is required, and I believe that in order to get down here to Celerity, I think you're going to have to take Detox. Spearhand Strike, just because, it's going to be better than Jade Walk, and unless there's a thing, it's going to require a Soothe. You won't need pressure points in raid. All right, that's 6 points. We need 2 more to get down here. I think you can hear this is kind of where you kind of get your first setup of pick stuff. I'm probably going to grab Vivacious Vivification and then grab Bounding Agility, just so that you can get a little further distance on your roll, and the instant Vivify with an extra healing is going to be good as like a quick little off heal or a quick little self heal on yourself that's basically only costing a global cooldown. Obviously, you're going to grab Transcendence. I think that's going to be a very, very important node. And then we're going to grab Celerity, because I think it's still just going to be the best option on the table. And Chi Burst has, I think, gotten a big enough buff that it's going to be worth using over the passive Chi Wave. Alright, now the one thing I still don't like here is this... Well, actually, never mind. I forgot about these connections. I was going to say you have to grab either Ring of Peace or Song of Chi to come grab Fort Brew or Diffuse Magic, but I forgot they added these connections here at Spirit's Essence, which, I mean, you may not necessarily want to grab because it's kind of useless, whereas Ring of Peace might be still situationally useful, and it opens up Peace and Prosperity if you want to grab that. But then you're obviously going to grab Improved Touch of Death. I think you'll still get Vigorous Expulsion, I think, is mandatory. Actually, let's do this. We're obviously going to get Ferocity of Juen, so we can grab Diffuse Magic or Yu'lon's Grace. It'll kind of depend on boss fight. And then we're gonna grab Spirit's Essence, just because, again, and this one is going to be either this or Ring of Peace, because I don't think you need Peace and Prosperity at all. In fact, we'll just go ahead and grab Ring of Peace as a mandatory in order to get to Fort Brew. You're going to grab Dampen Harm or Dance of the Wind, whichever is the option there. And then we have 2 more points left to spend in this tree. So again, we're getting to a point where you're starting to see the ridiculous levels of choice. I'm actually going to go grab for raid builds. I think Hasty Provocation might have some use. I'm thinking of fights like Dethea, where you want to get a mob to move faster to you so you can position it correctly. Thinking something like that. And then up here, you probably just want to grab... really, you can grab anything. So I'll probably just grab Jade Walk, just because it'll make getting back to bosses faster during prog. Alright, and then we're going to grab Strength of Spirit, and then we're going to grab Iron Shell Brew, because I think this is going to make this better. I think for most raid situations, unless there's a fight that really calls for it, you skip Summon Blackhawk Statue. And you're going to skip something like Celestial Determination, again, unless there's a boss that does it. Think of like Senarth, for example. All right, Martial Instincts I think is a must because it increases your physical damage done, and I think this is about all that you really have to take. Now, Chi Proficiency I think you can grab because magical damage, you do have a lot of that through Breath of Fire and Charred Passions, a lot of fire damage built into the kit. And then I think you either grab, Bounce Back just because it helps with big hits, tank buster type hits. And you grab Fatal Touch, which will give you a 30-second window after you cast Touch of Death with increased damage. But again, at this point, I think right here, we're basically at pick whatever you want. I'm going to grab Bounce Back, Fatal Touch, and then I'm going to go grab Flow of Chi. And then the last 2 talent points are going to entirely depend on fight design. Do you need to cover a lot of ground? I'm thinking if you're the ad tank on Broodkeeper Diurna, for example, Lighter Than Air would be a fantastic talent to have there, or even Rushing Reflexes or Clash would be really nice. Either one of those would be good to have. Is there a fight like Mythic Farrak where you have to Transcendence, or Laradar on Heroic, or normal, where you run the charge into the fire, and you can Transcendence back. And grabbing something like Transcendence League Spirits, which allows you to basically Wurnstone to someone. I think there's a lot of really nice flexibility. I'm going to grab Healing Winds and then Lighter Than Air, just because I think both of those to me are the most interesting. And I think this is pretty much a build that you want to run for Mythic Plus. Now, in a raid build, something like Lighter Than Air probably isn't going to be needed. But instead, you could go grab things like Crashing Momentum up at the top of this tree instead of grabbing Vicious Vivification, or even Bounding, or even something like Jade Walk. Those 2 talent points could go into something like Crashing Momentum and Wind's Reach to get you, 60% slow potentially. And then something like Ancient Arts is going to be very valuable in this build. Energy Transfer is going to be very valuable. Like, there's some really nice build potential for Mythic Plus, but for raid purposes, I think this is kind of what we're looking at least in theory. But again, those last probably like 5 points are going to be completely optional. Over on this side of the tree, obviously these 3 points are all mandatory. I still think you obviously grab Gift of the Ox. I think that's mandatory. Spirit of the Ox, I think, is mandatory. I think Hit Scheme is mandatory, mainly because you have to get it. And then Rushing Jade Winter Special Delivery, whichever is the best one, so that you can open up down to strike at dawn. And then for your 8th point, I think Elixir Determination is going to be the best for your 8th point here. I don't think that Staggering Strikes is any good because it doesn't reduce enough stagger. And Quick Sip is a potential because you're going to get a little bit of stagger basically every time you Keg Smash. Keg Smash does give, I think it's 3 seconds. Doesn't say, but I think it's 3 seconds, which means that every time you Keg Smash, you're going to get 5% of a stagger, which is good. Alright, and obviously you grab Celestial Brew, you're going to grab Breath of Fire, you're going to grab Solid Beam Strength, which I still think is the best. You're going to grab Guide Plins, because I still think that's very, very good. Zen Meditation to give you another cooldown. I do think you grab Strike at Dawn because you're going to be Rising Sun Kick quite a bit, and it's going to have some value now with Elusive Brawler stacking. Shadowboxing Treads, Counter Strike, I think these are all very good talents to have. And then do we grab one with the Wind, or do we grab August Blessing? Like, there's options here. I think Tranquil Spirit, very good, got separated out away from Guy Plans. So now every time you Expel Harm, you're going to get reduced stagger. Every time you Purify Stagger, you're going to heal a little bit. So there's just some good synergy here. I'm actually not going to grab any Ox in this build. You grab Training of Nijao, although Light Brewing I still think is an option if you're not comfortable with brew timings. So I think this is a very good talent to have. And I still think Bob and Weaver Black Ox, potentially, you don't need any of them. I don't think you need either of them, but in order to grab Exploding Keg, you are going to have to grab one of these. I think Bob and Weave is just a very safe pick, and it does open up the path to Exploding Keg. Now we have one more point to spend here, and I think there's a couple of different ways you could do it. You can grab Pretense of Instability, giving you even more dodge, which you're only purifying or celestialing while you're actively tanking, so good there. So again, we're going to switch to Shadow Pan because this is a raid build. So I think this is going to be like a raid build in theory, at least. August Blessing, I think it's going to do a lot of overhealing. The little bit of testing that I've seen on it is doing basically almost nothing but overhealing right now. So I'm going to go with One with the Wind because maintaining your mastery even better is just going to make mastery good. And then, of course, we grab Charred Passions. We're going to grab Exploding Keg. We're going to grab Elusive Footwork. And then we grab Ox Dance, and then I think we grab Heightened Guard, and potentially Black Ox Adept. Potentially is good, but I think with Heightened Guard it'll be fine because it makes it 50% instead of 60% of your health. And then we're going to grab Weapons of Order, and then I think we can grab... like again, we have really 4 points here that I think are pretty optional. So you can grab something like Facepalm, because obviously you Tiger's Palm a lot more in that situation. I think Anvil and Stave potentially is there, but I'm not gonna necessarily go with that. You could grab Storm Stout's Last Keg to get the additional charge. I think that's a good pick. I think Chi Surge might actually be decent. But even then, I'm going to say no for now. So really, you're kind of sitting on 2 points that I think are going to be anything. You can grab like a point in High Tolerance and then go grab Quick Sip. I think you can put just 2 full points in High Tolerance and skip Quick Sip and skip Pretense of Instability. Like, there's all sorts of options. You know, the haste thing is going to be kind of whatever, but I think you can do something like this. Or take a point in High Tolerance and then go grab something like Chi Surge. I think all of that is going to be able to allow for some really nice build flexibility. So I think this is kind of what we're looking at as a potential raid build with no Ox at all, just because I think Nejao is just not a very good cooldown. I said in my last video that Nejao needs to just be looked at in general, and I still believe that is the case. High Tolerance is obviously going to see some... cap on its power overall because Brewmaster still doesn't have any haste scaling, which is something else that I would like to see fixed. Windwalker now has haste scaling. Mistweaver obviously has haste scaling. Wouldn't mind seeing it for Brewmaster as well, but at the same time, Brewmaster likes its mastery in ways that Windwalker and Mistweaver do not. Though Mistweaver a little less so now with the changes it's been getting. So I kind of like this build here as a potential raid build, and I think Shadow Pan is going to be better than Master of Harmony, because raid is going to be a little bit more about eking out your damage and then just rotating your cooldowns effectively to survive any tank buster builds. But again, we don't know any of the fight designs, so that's obviously going to be very prone to change. All right, let's look at a Mythic Plus build. So let's remove all of these points here. So for Mythic Plus, I think we see some change here. I think you grab Tiger's Lust. I think you grab Fast Feet. Detox is an obvious one. Calming Presence, I think, is obvious. Grace of the Crane, I think potentially could be skipped, actually. So for now, we're going to just skip it. We're going to grab Spearhand Strike, and we still have 3 points left. I'm going to grab 2 points in Ancient Arts, and then I'm going to grab Crashing Momentum. I think this is going to be a very good talent for Mythic Plus week. Obviously, on weeks like Sanguine, we may not want to talent this, but I think generally speaking, it's going to be pretty good. Pressure Points, especially if there's any, this is going to be, so Pressure Points is a talent that you're going to grab, obviously, on Raging Week, but then anything that has a Soothe. So obviously, we need to see full dungeon designs, and I'm sure someone will go through and pick out everything that can be soothed and things like that. So this point right now, I'm not going to say is mandatory. Transcendence, I think, is mandatory. Ring of Peace is mandatory. Ferocity of Juen is mandatory. energy transfer, tiger tail sweep, and then dampen harm. This fort brew is obviously good. Diffuse magic is obviously good. 4 points left to spend, so I got one here. I'm gonna grab celerity. I think this will be good. Let me fill out this tree real quick. All right. Now, getting Ring of Peace on a 40-second cooldown versus a 45-second cooldown, I don't think is all that impactful. So as I kind of look at some other points here, I'm going to go ahead and grab Grace of the Crane, and then I'm going to grab Chi Burst, because I think those are valuable talent points. Now we're going to grab Iron Shell Brew and Strength of Spirit, and then we're going to come down here. I think we grab Healing Winds, we grab Bounce Back, we grab Martial Instincts, and then we grab Chi Proficiency. I think those are all like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points that are fairly mandatory. And then again, this is going to be all dependent on dungeon design. So again, we have like 3, potentially even as many as 5 points, because you can potentially skip Chi Proficiency if you don't want Lighter Than Air. It's like this is a potential mix-up done, but I'm going to say Flow of Chi, Fatal Touch. Probably on Tyrannical weeks you can grab this, but I think on Fortified weeks it's not that great. And then we're going to grab Rushing Reflexes. And then we have a last point to spend, so just for fun, we're going to grab Lighter Than Air. But again, Transcendence Link Spirits, Windwalking even might be potential. Black Arc Statue could be used depending on what your pull structure is going to look like. Like there's definitely some real options here. You can pull 2 points out of Ancient Arts potentially to go grab something like Pressure Points, and you know, something over here like Hasty Provocation if you think that's going to be helpful at all. Like there's some really nice flexibility to this class tree that didn't exist before, and really I think there's only about 22 points that are mandatory, and then you kind of pick things that you want on each tier in order to open up the next available gates. So for Mythic Plus, obviously these 3 points, I still think the top of the tree is pretty much the same. You're going to grab those first 5 points. I think they're mandatory. And again, I think here, again, Elixir Determination I think is going to be good. We're going to come down here and grab those. Now, I think here we skip Strike at Dawn, and I think we grab one with the Wind. Actually, we could probably skip either one of these for the moment. We're going to Guy Plans, Transcendent, Shadowboxing Treads. I think Pretense of Instability is going to be pretty decent. I don't think it's mandatory, though. Again, Light Brewing or Training of Nijao, this choice zone is going to entirely depend on how comfortable you are with your cooldowns. Bob and Weave so that we can get to Exploding Keg. Let's see, we have 3 points left to spend. So I'm going to grab one with the Wind. I'm going to grab Quick Sip. Then I'm going to grab Pretense of Instability. So those are my choices there, but you can easily grab August Blessing. You can go grab Strike at Dawn. I even think there's potential for Celestial Flames to be in play, or you can go grab your Nijao into Walk with the Ox. I think those are all options. I'm preferring to go Oxless because I just don't think this cooldown is very good. We're obviously going to grab Elusive Footwork. We're obviously going to grab Exploding Keg, Amstorm, Sal's Keg. I think those are all mandatory. Charred Passions I think is mandatory. And then we get into some interesting choices here. I think we grab Ox Stance and Heightened Guard. I think we grab Weapons of Order, and I think we can grab Chi Surge. Now, in terms of mandatory points, like down at this level of the tree, I think really the only one for Mythic Plus that's mandatory is Storm Stouts. In these final 2 tiers. On this row, I do think Elusive Footwork, Exploding Keg, and Charred Passions are all mandatory picks. But then we kind of get the kind of some fun interplay. So I think we can grab Weapons of Order, good cooldown. I think we grab Ox Stance and Heightened Guard. And then we have 3 points left to spend, and I think we can put them in a few different places. I think you can grab 2 points in High Tolerance and grab Counter-Strike. I think you could put, and I think Counter-Strike you probably need, because spinning Crane Kick damage is never a bad thing. So we have 2 points left to spend. I'm going to say we put a point into High Tolerance and then grab a point in Chi Surge. I think this is kind of a build that I think has very interesting. That way when Weapons of Order it goes off, not only are you getting the additional mastery, you get instant resets on your Keg Smash, which is good. And you get the 32% extra damage off of your targets taking damage from your Keg Smash. You're also grabbing, this pulsing Chi damage and reducing the cooldowns of Weapon of Order by up to 20 seconds. Like, there's just some really nice, and you get some versatility scaling in this, so it makes Verse a decent stat. I would just really like Chi Surge. I just kind of hate that right now it's not really in play at all. But you could easily go out of Chi Surge to grab a second point High Tolerance. You can grab something like Anvil and Stave if you want to do that, have a little bit more brew defensive. But I think this build, at least based off of what we know currently, is generally going to be something that I want to play around with. So, and then Master of Harmony, again, it's a lot of it has to do with the fact that I think you're going to be casting a lot more Celestial Brews in Mythic Plus, because you're the only tank, whereas in Raid, you don't necessarily fire them on cooldown because you want to save them for when you're actively tanking. So again, that's why I think Shadow Pan will be a better choice for Raid. Master of Harmony, based off of what I've read and what I've researched and stuff, I think is going to be the better Mythic Plus choice, which means that in some ways Blizzard has succeeded with what they want these trees to do. They want you to be able to play both of them for whatever reason you want. So, but yeah, these are the builds that I think in terms of a no Ox build basically on both of these. Lots of flex points. Like, I think there's only about 25 points in the class tree that are dubbed quote-unquote mandatory, and that's just to basically get you down the tree. And in the spec tree, I think it's about 27 points that are pretty much mandatory, and then you get 3 or 4 points that I think are completely optional. And obviously these are all going to be subject to change based on tuning. So I really like the fact that it's amazing what happened to the spec tree simply by freeing up 3 points. Like, we got 3 points back through improved Purifying Brew being gone, improved Celestial Brew being gone, and Elusive Footwork being dropped down to 1 point. It is amazing what that did to the quality of life of this tree. And with the fact that Nishal's kind of been put into a place where it doesn't feel as mandatory, allows for some really nice, to me, interesting build diversity that Brewmaster hasn't had in a long time. So anyways, guys, that was a 30-minute video on build theory, Brewmaster Monk. Let me know what you think about this video. If you have any thoughts, ideas for your talent builds that you've been playing with, let them down in the comments below. If you're interested in more Monk content throughout Alpha and as we move into the War Within, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be doing full-fledged, like, academy-style courses on the basics of Beginner's Guide to Monk for all 3 specs, and I plan on doing a lot with Monk right now. I'm still intending to main it come War Within, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing what we can do together in this channel. So if you want to see more Monk content, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It does support me and motivates me to keep going. Until the next video, I hope you all stay safe, hope you enjoy yourself, you're having fun, you keep on gaming, and I'll see you next time.